My name is Madison Harper, and I need to tell you about the Thanksgiving that destroyed my family. November 2019. I was 22 years old, in my final semester at the University of Michigan. Biology major. Partial scholarship, 3 part-time jobs, pulling all-nighters in the library until 3 a.m. But I was making it. I was living the dream. That year, Thanksgiving was going to be special. The whole family gathering at my grandparents' house in Connecticut. The light blue Victorian house where I'd spent every summer of my childhood. The one with the wide front porch, the giant oak tree in the yard, and that eternal smell of cinnamon and nutmeg that seemed baked into the walls. When I arrived that Thursday afternoon, the house was exactly as I remembered. Autumn wreath on the door, golden lights in the windows, and inside, organized chaos. My grandmother Dorothy in the kitchen, commanding everything like a general. Floral apron, silver hair pulled back in a perfect bun, laughing while my Aunt Linda tried not to burn the marshmallows on the sweet potato casserole. My grandfather William in the living room, sitting in his worn brown leather recliner, watching football with my dad and my Uncle Robert. That same recliner where he'd hold me when I was 5, reading bedtime stories. My cousins running through the house. The dog barking. The turkey already golden and glistening on the table. The table. God, the table was a work of art. Cream-colored embroidered tablecloth, perfectly pressed. Tall beeswax candles. White porcelain plates with gold trim, the ones Grandma only used for special occasions. Crystal glasses reflecting the light from the antique chandelier. I remember looking around and thinking, this is family. This is home. We sat down for dinner at 6 o'clock. 16 people around that long table. My grandfather at the head, as always. My grandmother at the other end. After the blessing, my grandfather raised his glass of red wine and said, like he did every year, "Let each of you share a gratitude. Something you're truly thankful for this year." My uncle thanked for his promotion. My aunt, for her mother's health after recovering from surgery. My cousins, for soccer teams, for trips, for girlfriends. And then, it was my turn. I stood up. My heart was pounding, not from nervousness, but from genuine emotion. From love. I held my glass of apple cider and looked directly at my grandfather. "Grandpa, I want to thank you for everything, but especially for the college fund you've been saving for me since I was born. Without that money, I never could have afforded the last 2 years of school. I'm graduating in May, and I wanted you to know that all of this was only possible because of you." Absolute silence. I expected applause. Smiles. Maybe my grandfather getting emotional, like he always did with these things. But there was none of that. My grandfather's face went pale, like the blood had drained in 2 seconds. My grandmother lowered her head, staring fixedly at her plate. Her hands were trembling slightly as she held her napkin. My father coughed, choked on his wine, started patting his chest. My Uncle Robert immediately stood up and went to the sideboard, pouring more wine into his glass, even though it was still full. The entire table fell silent. Not that reverent silence of a beautiful moment. It was the silence of embarrassment, of something wrong. I looked around. No one would meet my eyes. My 15-year-old cousin was scrolling on her phone under the table. My older cousin suddenly needed to use the bathroom. My mother. God, my mother's face. She was looking at my dad with an expression I'd never seen before. Panic. And my grandfather? He cleared his throat, forced a smile that didn't come close to reaching his eyes, and said, in the weakest voice I'd ever heard from him, "You're welcome, sweetheart. I'm glad it helped." People went back to eating. Someone quickly changed the subject. My uncle made a joke about the football game. But I knew. I knew something was deeply wrong, because when you grow up in a family that hides secrets, you learn to recognize their silences. And that silence was screaming. I couldn't eat after that. The turkey tasted like cardboard. The cranberry sauce stuck in my throat. I watched everyone around the table. They were all acting normal. Too normal. Laughing too loud at jokes that weren't funny. Complimenting the food too enthusiastically. My grandfather kept his eyes down. He barely touched his plate. My grandmother kept getting up to refetch things from the kitchen, things that were already on the table. She was avoiding being seated, avoiding conversation. And my parents, they exchanged looks, quick glances across the table. The kind of looks that said entire conversations without words. After dinner, people scattered. The men went back to the living room for more football. The women started clearing dishes. The kids disappeared upstairs to play video games. I helped carry plates to the kitchen, my mind racing. The college fund. My grandfather had promised it to me when I was 7 years old. I remember it so clearly. We were sitting on the porch swing, watching fireflies in the summer darkness. He'd said, "Madison, I've been saving for you since the day you were born. When you're ready for college, you won't have to worry. Grandpa's got you covered." I'd hugged him so tight. I'd felt so loved, so secure. And every year after that, he'd mention it. "How's my college girl doing? Keep those grades up. We've got big plans for you. That fund is growing nicely, just you wait." When I started college at 18, my parents told me the fund would cover my junior and senior years. The first 2 years, I'd need loans and scholarships. But after that, Grandpa's money would kick in. And it did. Or, I thought it did. Junior year, my tuition was paid. Senior year, same thing. $35,000 a year. $70,000 total. I'd never seen the actual transactions. My parents handled all the financial paperwork. But the bills were paid. I was able to focus on my studies instead of drowning in debt. I'd just assumed it was all real. I was drying dishes when I heard them. Voices in the hallway. Low. Urgent. My mother and Uncle Robert. I moved closer to the kitchen doorway, still holding a dish towel. I could see them through the crack between the door and the frame. Uncle Robert had his hand on my mother's shoulder. "You need to tell her." My mother shook her head, her eyes red. "Not now. Not here. Sarah," she just thanked him in front of everyone. "She thinks, I know what she thinks." My mother's voice broke. "But if we tell her now, it'll ruin everything. Just let her have this. Let her finish school. We'll deal with it after." "Deal with what?" Uncle Robert's voice was harsh. "The fact that there's no money, that there never was, not for the last 2 years anyway." My hand froze on the towel. No money. There never was. Not for the last 2 years. My mother was crying now. Soft, muffled sobs. Dad tried so hard to keep it going. But after the medical bills, after everything with Tom's business, she deserves to know the truth. The truth will destroy her. I stepped back from the doorway. My legs felt weak. I leaned against the counter, gripping the edge. The medical bills. Grandma had breast cancer 3 years ago. I knew that. I'd visited her in the hospital. I'd seen how expensive the treatments were, even with insurance. And Tom, that was my father. His construction business. It had gone under 2 years ago. He'd lost everything. We'd almost lost our house. I'd known things were tight. But I didn't know. I didn't know they'd used my college fund. I didn't know the money Grandpa promised me, the money I'd been thanking him for, the money I thought was paying my tuition, was gone. So where was the money coming from? I went upstairs to the bathroom and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, trying to breathe. Memories flooded back. Not just the porch swing conversation. All of them. Age 10. Grandpa taking me to the bank. Showing me a passbook with my name on it. Numbers I didn't understand, but he'd smiled and said, "This is your future, Maddie. This is your ticket to anywhere you want to go." Age 13. Overhearing Grandma and Grandpa talking in the kitchen. "We need to add more this year, William." "I know, Dorothy. I'm already working overtime at the plant. We'll make it work." Age 16. Grandpa giving me a card for my birthday. Inside a note, "One step closer to that degree. Keep dreaming big." Every holiday, every birthday, every family gathering. The college fund was the foundation of every plan I'd ever made. It was why I dared to apply to Michigan instead of the local community college. It was why I'd chosen a demanding major instead of something easier. It was why I'd worked myself to exhaustion but still believed it would all be worth it. Because Grandpa had my back. Except, he didn't. Or he did, and then he couldn't anymore. And no one told me. I looked at myself in the mirror. My reflection stared back, tired eyes, forced smile from dinner still lingering on my face. Who was paying for school? The question kept circling my mind like a vulture. I came back downstairs an hour later. The house had quieted. Most of the extended family had left. Just my parents, my grandparents, and Uncle Robert remained. They were in the living room. The football game was still on, but no one was watching. I stood in the doorway. Where did the money come from? They all turned to look at me. 4 guilty faces. My mother stood up. "Madison, sweetheart, where did the money come from?" I repeated. My voice was steady, calm, which somehow made it worse. My grandfather looked at the floor. My father rubbed his face with both hands. Uncle Robert sighed and leaned back in his chair. It was my grandmother who finally spoke. "Your parents took out loans." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "After your grandfather's fund ran out, after the cancer treatments, after your father's business collapsed, there was nothing left. But you were already in school. You were doing so well. We couldn't." Her voice cracked. "We couldn't let you drop out." My mother stepped closer. "We took out Parent Plus loans. In our names. $70,000 over 2 years. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "You went into debt. For me. We wanted you to succeed," my father said quietly. "We wanted you to have what we never did." But I thanked Grandpa. My voice was barely a whisper. At dinner, in front of everyone, I thanked him for money that he didn't give me. My grandfather finally looked up. His eyes were wet. "I wanted you to believe it was me. I couldn't stand the thought of you knowing I'd failed you." "You didn't fail me. I stopped. My throat was too tight. "I promised you that money when you were 7 years old," he said. "I worked double shifts for 10 years to build that fund. And then it was gone. In 6 months of hospital bills and business debts. Gone." "We made the decision together," my grandmother added. "All of us. We decided you didn't need to know. We decided to let you think everything was fine. You let me live a lie." Silence. "We let you focus on school," my mother said, "instead of drowning in guilt and worry like we were." I looked at each of them. These people I loved. These people who loved me. And I didn't know whether to scream at them or collapse crying. I sat down on the couch. My legs couldn't hold me anymore. $70,000, I said. That you don't have. My parents exchanged another look. The payments are manageable, my father said. We'll pay it off. Eventually. How long? 20 years, my mother whispered. Maybe 25. I did the math in my head. They were in their 50s. They'd be paying off my college until they were 75. Retirement money. Gone. Their financial security. Gone. All for me. Why didn't you tell me? My voice broke. I could have transferred. I could have gone somewhere cheaper. I could have dropped out. Uncle Robert interrupted. Worked minimum wage jobs for the rest of your life? Is that what you wanted? I wanted the truth. The truth, my grandfather said heavily, is that we failed. I failed. I promised you something I couldn't deliver. No. I shook my head. The failure was making me thank you for it, making me stand up at that table and give a speech about how grateful I was, while everyone in this family knew it was a lie. My grandmother was crying now. We didn't know you were going to say that. Of course I was going to say that. I've been planning that speech for weeks. I wanted to honor Grandpa. I wanted everyone to know how much he'd sacrificed for me. I laughed bitterly. Turns out he didn't sacrifice anything. You did. I looked at my parents. You sacrificed everything. My mother sat down next to me and took my hand. We'd do it again. In a heartbeat. That's not the point. Then what is the point, Madison? My father asked. What should we have done differently? I pulled my hand away from my mother's. You should have trusted me with the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my childhood bedroom, the same twin bed, the same glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, the same worn stuffed rabbit on the shelf. But nothing felt the same. I thought about every sacrifice I'd seen and never understood. My parents' car. It was 12 years old. The check engine light had been on for 2 years. They kept saying they'd get it fixed, eventually. Because they were paying my tuition. Our family vacations. They'd stopped when I was in high school. Things are tight, they'd always said. I'd been disappointed but understood. Because they were saving for my college fund. Or trying to. My mother's work schedule. She'd taken on night shifts at the hospital 2 years ago. Said it paid better. I'd felt bad that she was so tired all the time. Because she was paying my tuition. My father's clothes. Worn. Patched. He'd joke about being broken in and comfortable. But now I knew. He wasn't buying new clothes. Because he was paying my tuition. Every birthday where they'd given me small, practical gifts instead of the things I really wanted. Every Christmas where we'd had a simplified celebration. Every time they'd said, "We're fine," when I'd asked if they needed help with bills. They'd been lying. Protecting me. Drowning quietly so I could swim. And I'd never even noticed. I thought about my grandfather too. The man who'd worked double shifts for a decade to save for me. Who'd lost it all to circumstances beyond his control. Who'd sat at that Thanksgiving table, letting me thank him for money he didn't give, because he couldn't bear to admit he'd failed. I thought about my grandmother, who'd survived cancer and immediately worried about my college payments instead of her own health. I thought about Uncle Robert, who'd wanted to tell me the truth. Who'd been outvoted by a family that loved me too much to burden me with their sacrifice. And I thought about myself. The girl who'd stood up at Thanksgiving dinner and given a speech full of gratitude, while being completely, utterly, heartbreakingly ignorant of what it had actually cost. Trust. That's what was broken. Not their love for me. That was clear. Painfully clear. But trust. They hadn't trusted me to handle the truth. hadn't trusted me to make my own decisions about my education, my future, my debt. And now I didn't know if I could trust any memory, any promise, any reassurance. If they could hide this, something this huge, this life-altering, what else had they hidden? The next morning, Black Friday, I came downstairs to find my parents at the kitchen table with coffee and heavy silence. I sat down across from them. I need to see the loan documents. My father slid a folder across the table. He'd clearly expected this. I opened it, page after page of legal text. But the numbers were clear. 2 loans, $35,000 each. Interest rates at 7.5%. Current balance, $72,448. Monthly payment, $511. 25-year repayment plan. Total amount they'd end up paying with interest, over $150,000. For my $70,000 education. I closed the folder. You're paying double. Because of the interest. We know, my mother said quietly. You'll be 78 years old when this is paid off. We know. You did this without telling me. We did. I looked at them, really looked at them. My father's hair was grayer than I'd realized. My mother had new lines around her eyes. They looked older, tired, worn down by 2 years of secret financial burden. I would have made different choices, I said. If I'd known. We didn't want you to make different choices, my father replied. We wanted you to follow your dreams. My dreams are costing you your retirement. Our retirement is watching you succeed. I shook my head. That's not how it works. That's not. I stopped. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Madison, my mother said. But love is. Love is giving everything you have to the people who matter most. Even if it destroys you, we're not destroyed. My father reached across the table and covered my hand with his. We're proud. There's a difference. I pulled my hand back. I'm angry. You have every right to be. I'm angry that you lied. We didn't lie, my mother said carefully. We just didn't tell you everything. That's the same thing. Is it? My father leaned back. If you'd known, what would you have done? I would have transferred to a state school. Or taken a year off to work. Or, exactly, he interrupted. You would have derailed your entire future. For us. That's not love, Madison. That's sacrifice we didn't want you to make. So you made it instead. Yes. Without asking me. Yes. Without giving me a choice. My mother's voice was firm now. Because we're your parents. That's our job. To carry the burdens so you don't have to. I'm not a child anymore. You'll always be our child. The words hung in the air. I stood up. I need some air. I grabbed my coat and walked out the back door. I walked to the park 3 blocks away. The same park where I'd played as a kid. The swings were still there, dusted with frost. I sat on one and pushed myself gently, the chains creaking. My phone buzzed. Text from my mother. Come back when you're ready. We love you. I didn't respond. Another text from Uncle Robert. They did what they thought was right. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it. But don't waste energy being angry at people who bled themselves dry for you. I stared at the message. Bled themselves dry. That's exactly what they'd done. I thought about the next 6 months. Finishing my degree. Walking across that stage in May. Wearing the cap and gown. It would all feel hollow now. Every achievement tainted by the knowledge of what it cost. Not what it cost me. What it cost them. My phone rang. Grandpa, I answered. Madison. His voice was rough. I need you to understand something. I waited. When I made you that promise, when I told you I'd pay for your college, I meant it with every fiber of my being. I worked overtime for 10 years. I skipped vacations. I drove the same truck for 20 years. I did everything I could to keep that promise. I know, Grandpa. And when it was gone, when the medical bills came, when your father lost everything, I felt like I'd failed at the one thing that mattered most. Being there for my granddaughter. His voice broke. Your parents went into debt because I couldn't keep my promise. They're paying the price for my failure. It's not your fault Grandma got sick. I know. But it doesn't change how it feels. He paused. At that dinner, when you thanked me, for a moment, I got to feel like I'd kept my promise after all. Like I'd succeeded. Even though I knew it was a lie. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry we let you believe it, he continued. But I'm not sorry we protected you. That's what family does. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. I sat there on the swing, cold wind biting my face, phone pressed to my ear. I'm graduating in May, I finally said. I know. We'll all be there. The degree is as much yours as it is mine. All of yours. No. His voice was firm. That degree is yours alone. Earned by your intelligence, your hard work, your dedication. We just removed some obstacles along the way. $70,000 obstacles. Worth every penny. I didn't know what to say to that. Come back to the house, Grandpa said gently. Your grandmother made your favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes. Despite everything, I smiled a little. I'll be there soon. 6 months later, May 2020. I walked across that stage at the University of Michigan and received my diploma. Bachelor of Science in Biology, summa cum laude. My family was in the audience. All of them. Grandparents, parents, aunt, uncle, cousins. They cheered louder than anyone when my name was called. Afterward, in the parking lot, my mother hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. We're so proud of you, she whispered. I hugged her back. I know. And I'm grateful. For what? I pulled back and looked at her. Then at my dad. Then at my grandparents. For the truth. Finally. My father raised an eyebrow. You're grateful we lied to you for 2 years? No. I smiled. A real smile this time. I'm grateful you loved me enough to sacrifice for me. Even though I wish you hadn't had to. My grandmother took my hand. Every parent wants to give their children a better life than they had. You did, I said. But not because you paid for school. Because you taught me what real love looks like. Messy, complicated, sometimes misguided, but real. My grandfather was crying. He didn't even try to hide it. I walked over to him and wrapped my arms around him. Thank you, I whispered. For what? I didn't. For trying. For working those double shifts. For keeping that promise for as long as you could. And for letting Mom and Dad finish what you started. He held me tight. Later, at the graduation dinner, I stood up to make a toast. Last Thanksgiving, I began, I thanked Grandpa for something I thought he'd given me. Turns out, I was thanking the wrong people. My parents looked down at their plates. So let me fix that. I raised my glass. To Mom and Dad. For the sacrifices I didn't know about. For the debt I didn't ask you to take on. For the lie I'm still not entirely okay with. My mother's eyes filled with tears. But most of all, for loving me enough to bet your future on mine. I don't know if I'll ever be able to repay you. but I promise I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worth it. My father shook his head. You already are. Maybe, I said, but I'm going to make sure of it. Because that's what I learned that Thanksgiving. Gratitude isn't just about saying thank you for gifts you receive. It's about recognizing the sacrifices people make in silence, the battles they fight where you can't see them, the weight they carry so you can fly, and most importantly, it's about being worthy of that sacrifice, not by paying them back, but by living a life that makes every penny, every sleepless night, every hidden burden worthwhile. My name is Madison Harper, and I graduated debt-free. But my parents didn't, and that's a truth I'll carry with me forever, not as a burden, but as a reminder that the most valuable education I ever received wasn't taught in a classroom. It was taught around a Thanksgiving table. The day I thanked the wrong person for the right reason, and discovered what family really means.